Hey everybody. Um, Give me a thumbs up in the chat if you can hear me. So make sure that the audio works before we get started here. Okay. Cool. Nice. Awesome. Let's go. Let's get started. Thanks for joining everybody today. It looks like we got people from all over. Valerie from France, William coming in from Ohio, um, California, Israel, Czech Republic, India, Ukraine, New York City, Macedonia. Let's go. Jamaica, Palestine, Montreal, Indonesia, Philippines. Wow. Some of you guys are up late, huh? First, I want to apologize for the delay in getting this started. I, at the last minute, decided to put together something for this live stream, and it took a little bit longer than I anticipated. Should have done it last night, but we got it pulled together. So yeah, let's get started. I don't want this to take too much of your time, so we'll just jump right into it. I am going to answer your questions. If you guys have any at the very end, we'll open it up to a question and answer session. Yeah, so let's get started. And I'm crossing my fingers that this all works. So cross your fingers with me. Okay, so I just want to let's just quickly go over what we're gonna do in this live stream. First of all, I want to talk about why you absolutely should be learning character animation in After Effects, and I'm assuming that most of you guys who are here joining the live stream, you are interested in character animation, or else you wouldn't be joining the live stream. But I just want to kind of talk about some of the reasons why I think if you're a motion designer and you're somebody who's in After Effects, whether or not you want to be a character animator or you just want character animation to be a part of your toolkit, it is something that you absolutely should learn. And then I want to talk about what stops people from learning character animation in After Effects. We're going to go over some of the pitfalls, the hurdles that people encounter. These might even be hurdles that you're encountering right now. And then we're going to talk about the solution to those pitfalls. And I'm going to give you some tips and some advice on how to make practicing and learning character animation more approachable, easier to tackle, and so that you can start improving your skills at a quicker pace. And then I'm going to talk about a special offer that we have at the end. And then we'll go into Q&A. And you can ask me anything. You can ask me about motion graphics, character animation, about the offer, anything we talked about today. Sound good? All the... Yeah, and by the way, if you have questions, just leave them in the chat, and hopefully I'll be able to get to them. But it's probably best just to wait until we get to the Q&A so that they don't get lost in all the messages. But if you have a question and you don't want to forget it, don't hesitate to leave it in the chat. I will go back through the chat and make sure I try to get all the questions answered. Okay, so let's talk about why you should absolutely learn character animation. Is there anybody here that feels like there is a great need for them in their work to learn character animation as a motion designer? I know that before I learned character animation, I used to dread anytime a client would have an idea or a storyboard with character animation, because I would be instantly trying to think about how can I simplify this to something really simple, because every time I had tried to do character animation, it didn't turn out how I wanted. and it was way more work than I thought it should be, and it became a point of a pain for me as a motion designer, because I always associated character animation with like frame by frame animation, just painfully going over every frame, redrawing, and that's just not a skill I had. And so when I first discovered, Duik was the first tool that I discovered. I got really excited about it because, hey, this is a tool that it allows some kind of character animation or character rigging in After Effects. But the thing about Duik is it has a huge or a steep learning curve. And so I was turned off about character animation for a long time. But let's just go over some of the reasons why, despite the fact that character animation is hard, you should commit yourself to learning it. And we're going to go over some of the benefits that knowing how to do character animation will benefit you in your career. First of all, the biggest reason is that clients love character animations. This is a real email that I got from a real client, and this was their response when I sent over. This was like a 2-3 minute explainer video. And what's funny about this is that the explainer video did not have, it only had 2 or 3 sections with character animation. But once we sent over the version with the character animations, this is the response that we got back, right? And this is the kind of response that you want to get from your clients. If you don't get responses quite as enthusiastic as this most of the time, and so when you do, you're on the right track. That's the biggest reason why you should learn character animation, because clients love character animation. Those you work for love character animations. And we'll talk about in just a second why they love it. But first, I want to talk about another reason, and that is it sets you apart as a motion designer. So a few of you said in the chat, character animation is hard. And it is hard. And the fact that it's hard is the reason why you should be learning it, because the hard skills, the skills that are hard to master, are the skills that not everybody spends the time to try to learn. And so if you can identify what those skills are, and then if you can learn them, then that helps set you apart, because, the harder the skill is, the less amount of people that are going to learn that skill. And character animation is, there's a lot to it. There's a little bit of a learning curve. And so if you can learn this skill, you will stand out from the rest of the motion designers. Another reason is that character animation is an effective tool to engage audiences, which is something that your client's going to like, because more people are going to watch their explainer video or whatever it is that you're making for them. And the reason why it's an effective tool to engage audiences is because characters are easy for me and you and our clients and their customers to relate to, right? There was a comment on one of my posts on YouTube where somebody said, I like character animation because I have a hard time visualizing with abstract ideas and shapes, which is really kind of trendy in motion graphics, especially when it comes to explainer videos, coming up with these abstract symbols and movements and stuff like that to try to convey ideas. Whereas this person was saying, I like character animation because it's much easier to create a scene that relates to the ideas that we're trying to communicate. If you are, let's say, for example, doing an explainer video for a cryptocurrency business, and you're wanting to kind of communicate how their app helps people invest in cryptocurrency, for example, it's just much easier to animate or to communicate that idea through a character pulling out a phone, scrolling through an app, so that rather than through shapes and just titles. And it's a little bit more interesting, in my opinion. So it's an effective tool to engage the audience. And it expands your career opportunities. Look, Nobody wants to be in the situation where you're confronted with a script and a storyboard from a client and that involves character animation, and you never want to be in the position to say, hey, look, how about we go in this less interesting, more abstract direction instead of this character animation direction, because secretly you don't think you're very good at character animation and you don't think you can do it. You don't ever want to be in that position, and you don't want to be in the position to say, oh yeah, I can do that, and then be overwhelmed with the task of animating your character, right? Sorry guys, I'm just going to pull up my notes here so I don't forget to mention anything. So, these are all things that I think are important to consider when deciding if you're going to invest the time and effort into learning character animation. The last benefit is that learning to animate characters in After Effects makes character animation accessible to those of us who are not illustrators, who are not traditionally good at drawing. Traditional frame-by-frame animation, right? It really does require you to be able to be good at drawing and to master all the other aspects of of animation, right? Like easing and arcs and stuff like that. That's all a bunch of really technical skills. And After Effects and animating characters in After Effects makes that whole process much, much more accessible to us, non-draw talented people. And even if you are good at drawing, there's a difference between being good at drawing and being good at drawing the same picture consistently over a course of 1,000 frames, and then getting the motion right. For those of us who are After Effects users, we are much more, we already have that knowledge of how to work with keyframes, and so we can take that knowledge and we can kind of translate it to character animation. And so you kind of have a leg up there. Now I want to talk about what stops people from learning character animation. What is it that makes character animation in After Effects so hard? So the first thing is, before we get into all the specifics of what makes it hard, the first thing I want to say is that there is really only one way to get better at character animation. And that is, anybody want to guess? Oh, just a second, guys. My slideshow's not updating on the need it to update. I don't know if, oh, there we go. I think it's because I minimized it. Okay, so there you go. There we go. Up there. There's really only one way to get better at character animation. Valerie, you are right. It's practice. Okay? So with that in mind, now let's talk about what makes practicing animation, character animation, hard in After Effects. Like I mentioned before, there's a steep learning curve to character animation. Being able to animate a character, that final step of animating your character, requires you to know the process of rigging that character, which requires you to know the process of designing that character, which requires you to know the process of setting up that design, which requires you to know all the limitations of rigging, so you know how to design it and you know how to make limbs with the joints that line up so that they don't disconnect when you start bending them. It takes a lot of trial and error before you get it right, especially when you haven't done it before. And if any of you have tried to learn character animation before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's so much that you need to learn before you even get to the animation stage of character animation that by the time you get to that stage, you're worn out and your creative energy is spent, right? And there's a lot of reasons for that. First of all, like I mentioned previously, all of our first exposures, a lot of us, our first exposures to character animation is through Duik. And don't get me wrong, Duik is a great tool. What the people at RX Labs are doing with Duik is awesome. The fact that they offer it for free so you can learn it without having to invest a bunch of money. The amount of features in Duik are incredible. It's definitely a tool worth learning. However, Duik has a incredibly steep learning curve. It has a very specific process that you need to follow in order to correctly and efficiently rig up your characters. And in order to follow that process, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you need to learn about designing your characters in a specific way so that when you go into After Effects and you start rigging everything up, everything lines up correctly, doesn't break when you start moving it around. Anyway, you guys get the point. It's a whole process. And because of that, the steep learning curve of Duik, it turns a lot of people off to character animation. The other thing is that character animation is time consuming and you're dealing with a lot of layers and it gets very complex. And sometimes it feels like it's just not worth the time. And then I think this might be the biggest problem is that if you're trying to learn character animation on YouTube, there are a plethora of tutorials, my channel included, on how to learn character animation, but there's not a clear path of here's where you need to start, here's the things you need to learn first, and then here's where you want to go. You know, I get a lot of questions from people who want to know, hey, how do I do this technique? Or how do I do this technique? How do I animate with perspective? How do I animate with, how do I create a head rig? How do I create a body turn? How do I do this? And these are all great questions, but the thing is in order to learn those things, there are a lot of things you need to learn first before you go to body turns. You need to have an intimate understanding of how a rig is put together before you think about or try to attempt creating a rig that can turn, that creates the faux 3D effect. Because if you try to just jump to that more advanced technique, that's when you're going to be frustrated. That's when you're going to think, you know, you're going to be overwhelmed by that process. And all that can lead you to think, maybe I'm just not cut out for character animation. I'll stick to abstract shapes and text animations and patterns and textures and stuff like that. I'll let other people do the character animation. But here's the thing. You can animate characters. If you can animate text and shapes and do, you know, the most basic motion graphic type things in After Effects, you can animate characters. What you need is just the proper guidance, the proper process, and practice. So let's now talk about how do we get to that practice phase quicker? How do we eliminate some of the headaches that come with After Effects and animating? By the way, I am seeing your comments or your questions in the chat. I love them. Keep them coming. We will definitely address them once I'm done with this little presentation. But lots of good comments or questions. So stick to the end so we can answer those questions. So part of making character animation easier is just nailing down a process that breaks the process of character animation into more manageable chunks. So when it comes to actually animating characters for clients, here's kind of my process that I use. I brainstorm ideas, I gather references, I create a rough sketch or thumbnail of what I want to animate. I use those sketches to create an animatic. And then I storyboard it all out in Illustrator. This is the phase where I kind of lay it out, make sure that it looks good, and this is what I present to the client. And then I design my characters. As part of that storyboarding process is kind of when I design my characters for rigging. And then I design, okay, I already said that. Then I'll rig the character with Limber. Limber is the tool that I like to use, and we'll talk a little bit about that at the end, about why I choose Limber over Duik or DK or Rubber Hose or Puppet Pins. I know some of you guys are asking questions about which one of those, and really you can make great animations with any of the tools, but there are some very specific reasons why I prefer Limber over the others. We'll get into that. And then, of course, the final process that I kind of outlined here is just like the animation process, which the animation process in and of itself is also broken down into different steps. There's blocking and then smoothing out the transitions. I like to break my motion up into different parts of the character. So usually I'll tackle the core of the character, which is the body, neck, and the head. I'll do that first. Then I'll move on to the legs and then the arms. So I like to break everything down, because when you break things down, it makes things much easier. So the planning phase, this is kind of the first phase of the process. This includes brainstorming ideas, gathering references, creating that rough sketch, and then using those sketches to either just straight create an animatic. If you don't know what an animatic is, it's just a very rough version of what your animation is going to finally be. It's almost like a slideshow of just pictures that just kind of show, the animation goes from here to here to here. And you're not putting a lot of detail into it. You're kind of feeling for timing. You want to make sure that at this point there's enough time for each story beat to hit with the audience. And then you move on to creating the animatic, and then that animatic eventually is what you use as you create your animation. The next part is storyboarding. You're blocking out your scene. This is where I jump into Illustrator. This is where I'm going to design my characters, design the backgrounds, design each scene as like a plate. And then this is ultimately what I'm pulling from as I move from Illustrator into After Effects. I'm pulling the assets from the storyboard part. I'm going to talk about the benefits of storyboarding after this section, because if you're not in the habit of storyboarding, you need to be slapped on the wrist, and you need to be think about your life choices, because storyboarding is absolutely a technique that you need to adopt. And I'll explain why in just a second. Then we go from storyboarding to the animation part, and I include the animation phase, actually creating the rig in After Effects. This is where you're bringing over the character artwork that you created in Illustrator, and you're using Limber or Duik or Rubber Hose or DK tool, whatever your tool is, and you're turning that artwork into an actual functional rig with controllers and everything, and then blocking out the animations, which entails getting your poses down on the timeline, and then however. My blocking of animation is a little bit different than some other popular YouTubers that I've seen and other courses that I've seen. For example, the School of Motion, they have a course on character animation. The way that he blocks out his animation is sort of different than mine. And I honestly, and obviously, I think my way's a little bit better, because I think it's simpler to follow. But everybody has their own way, but I like to block out my character by different sections, like I just mentioned. Like I like to nail down the motion of the body and the head, neck and head, the core of the character, because all the limbs are parented back to that core. And so the core kind of drives the motion of the animation. It's what drives the weight of your character. So nailing that down first is, I think, important, instead of some other methods are kind of laying down different poses with hold keyframes to check for timing, and then converting those hold keyframes to actual keyframes, and then refining that animation. I just don't like dealing with the whole character all at once. I think it's too much to try to keep track of at once. So that's why I like to break it down into the body's motion, the legs motion, the arms motion, and you can kind of work it from there. And then once you get to the final touches, which is the last kind of phase, this is where you're going to smooth out the animations. You're really going to focus on getting that graph editor feeling nice. This is where you're going to add details like shadows in, under the arm and in between the legs. Any other details, hair flopping, secondary animations, so clothing swaying, any kind of effects that you're going to apply to your animation. You're going to apply grain or texture or lighting, any of that stuff. So that's kind of the breakdown of my process. So let me just show you some examples of this process in action. So here's this animation that I made. And I made this for my Instagram for hitting 7,000 followers. If you're not following me on Instagram, go follow me at keyframe_academy. So let's just go through this the process that I just outlined, how I use that process to create this. So the first thing is to find or gather references. In this case, I didn't want to find references, so I created my own references. I took some pictures. You can see those pictures at the top of my wife in these various poses, just with my phone, and I had her sit there, and then I actually had her move, and then let me just go back here. You can see I started to try to just look at the picture and draw it out, and then I realized really quickly that I just need to trace the shape here so I can get the perspective right. And this was taken on my iPhone with the wide angle lens so that I could really get that exaggeration of the feet coming forward. I wanted that perspective of that foreshortening effect. And then I just started to trace it. I don't know how well you can see that on the stream. I just started tracing the pictures, and then I would move the drawing down here and just making these key points that I know I'm going to need reference for the animation. So even though this is all just one animation of kind of the camera rotating around the character, I know that I need these different reference points so that I can make that transition. And you'll see in the next slide how I turn these sketches into an animatic, and then you'll see how I use that animatic to then create the animation. So here I'm just taking those sketches and putting them on top of each other. And here I just kind of took one of the sketches and refined it a little bit to just kind of think about how the character that I'm going to animate is actually going to look. And you'll see that generally it kind of turns out like this. So then I take those sketches and I make this little animatic, right? Animatics are just meant to be simple. They're not a lot of detail there. There's no character detail. I'm not trying to, outline what that character is going to look like. I'm just going to take this animation, this little animatic, little slideshow. I'm going to plop it into After Effects, and I'm just going to use the different poses here as a guide. And I don't have to stick to this timing, right? This timing is just a rough estimate. And then I can refine that as I start to animate the character. And this is what it kind of looks like in After Effects. And I'm using Limber. And just a side note, I don't want to get too far into this, but this is one of the reasons why I like using Limber, is because out of all the tools out there for After Effects, Limber is the only one that I know of that you can get this kind of foreshortening perspective look, because Limber gives you control over the size of each joint. So the hip, knee, and ankle, I can make those bigger, and it gives me control over the length of the two segments that make up your limb. And when you're doing foreshortening, you want your limb to be shorter and you want it to be larger at one end and thinner at the other end. And Limber makes that possible. And all those properties are keyframeable. And so that's why I like to use Limber. And here I'm just using the plain default limber limb, but later I'll go through and I'll customize that limb once I have the motion all done. And then here's what that kind of first pass looks like, just from those reference photos, those reference sketches. And on this one, I started with the legs because I knew that the legs were going to kind of be the focal point of this animation, and I wanted to make sure that I got that part of it correct and that it was going to work. Because if I couldn't get the legs right, then the whole animation needed to be rethought, right? So in this case, I'm not going to start with the torso because the torso isn't the focal point of the animation. The legs are. And so once I got that figured out, then I could move on, start doing the torso, and make everything kind of follow those legs. So yeah, that's the process of creating this animation. This is still in the kind of roughing out, the blocking phase. Once I get that blocking phase, you can see here, once everything is done, this is going really quickly, but now you can see I'm starting to add in the details like the shadows and all that stuff. I've customized the limbs. I've done a lot of finishing touches. Excuse me, guys. A lot of talking. Let me just take a little bit of a drink here. All right, let's do another example. So I made this. I call this animation becoming one with the keyframe, because as animators, you have to become one with the keyframe, obviously. So the first thing is, for this one, I did gather references. Pinterest is one of my go-to places for gathering references. Probably not a surprise to anybody who's ever had to gather references. Pinterest is a great place to look for those. Once I kind of put together a little mood board of this kind of meditation pose, I went in and I created my rough sketch. And this is kind of my rough sketch. I'm kind of right here exploring like how does the arms, what are we doing with the arms? I know what they're doing with the legs. The legs need to be crossed, but what do we do with the arms? So I'm kind of exploring that. And I like to do this. I'm doing this on my iPad because just sketching it out, I can get ideas out of my head and onto the paper really quickly. And I am, in this one, I am kind of also trying to think about like character design a little bit, and then I kind of do the next pose where he's floating up. And again, the storyboard is not too, I guess this is the animatic. It's not too detailed because I already kind of knew exactly what I was going to do for the animation. There was just a few little things I needed to work out. Here, I took some photos of myself doing the motion where he goes like this because, and this happens to me a lot, but I will try to just animate something from my brain and it doesn't work out. And no matter how many times that happens, I always think there's something, and I don't know if you guys feel this or not, but there's always something where I feel like to be a good artist, I have to be able to create something purely from my imagination. And it feels like looking at references is cheating or copying or imitating. But the thing is, that's kind of an absurd way to look at it. The greatest artists in the world look at reference, whether that's real life references or they gain inspiration from other artists. Looking and using references is a standard practice, and if you're not doing it, you should be, and you should leave behind that thought of, in order for this to be my art, I have to be able to do it without looking at anybody else's art for inspiration. But finding inspiration in other people's work is common, and also just filming yourself doing something so that you can figure out how exactly the hands should look in this position and then in this position. So this is what I'm doing here. I'm trying to work out, because first of all, hands are something that I struggle with a lot. So I need reference for hands. But I kind of worked out that animation. Okay, so I moved on to actually designing my character. This is the storyboard part. I designed this thing. You'll notice he only has one arm because I don't need to design both arms in Illustrator, because what I'll end up doing is I'll create, I'll use this arm that I designed to rig with Limber, and then I'll just use Limber to duplicate and then reverse that arm for the other arm. Same thing with the leg. The only reason why you'll see that this leg over here on the right does not have the little sleeve of the shorts. And that's because I knew I didn't need to go into all the detail on the right, on this right leg. I guess it's his left leg, because I knew I was just going to duplicate this left one. But for the purposes of just seeing the character laid out in the storyboard, I just quickly copied this, pasted over here, make sure it felt good. And then here's a little time lapse. This is like sped up by like 400% because this is a couple hours of work. But you can kind of see here I'm working on the up and down motion of the body, the torso, because again, the legs and the arms are all tied into the torso. And so I want to make sure that I get that motion first done, because as he bobs up and down when he's floating, his legs are kind of reacting to that. That's called overlapping action, right? And so I need to get that torso motion figured out. You know, what's going to be the speed of the bumping and the motion and the easing of the bumping up and down, because that's going to affect how his legs are going to react to that. How much is his legs going to bob up and down in response to the body? So that's why I don't really like the process of like nailing down poses with hold keyframes for the entire character and then going back, because I feel like it doesn't result in it's not as logical to me in terms of breaking down the motion of an animation. Anyway, adding little details, finishing up the legs, and then I move on to the arms. And you can see here, I really struggle with the hands on this one, figuring out exactly what I wanted. I finally got it somewhere that I wanted it to be. A lot of times when I'm animating hands, I'm just animating shape paths. There's no magic behind that. It's pretty straightforward. And then here I'm getting into the final details. I'm doing the background and stuff like that. I ended up changing the background for the final animation. But yeah, so that's my process, and those are some examples of that process. So let's talk about some of the benefits of a process like this really quickly. One thing about the process is planning saves you a ton of time. And I know that that's probably a pretty obvious thing to say, but I know that as artists, it's really tempting for us to just jump right into it. We have a vision for an animation that we think is going to be cool, and let's just jump right into it. Let's fire up After Effects and let's just start drawing. But planning out your animations is incredibly useful because it helps you anticipate seeing your vision in a rough form. Believe it or not, helps you anticipate problems that are going to come up down the road. And when you're working on a client project and you have a timeline and you have a budget, you can very quickly identify when an idea is too ambitious for what they're paying you or the project, right? So planning is incredibly crucial. Storyboarding is a practice you should adopt religiously. Look, it is much easier to change or pivot on an idea when it's in storyboard form than after you've spent hours animating a scene, and then your client comes back and says, hey, we actually want this to be, we want the scene to go like this. And then you have to undo all that work that you did. So you want to give your clients as many opportunities before you start throwing down keyframes to reject ideas, so that when you start throwing down those keyframes, your client is already in love with the idea and they're not going to change their mind. And storyboarding helps you get there. But storyboarding isn't just for your clients. It's for you too. how having yourself see your ideas down on paper or on the screen, out of your brain and on the screen, has two benefits. One, you are able to see your vision and see if it's working and see if it's going to work, if it's going to flow, if it looks good, is it communicating? And getting it out of your head opens up your creative space, your creative energy to continue coming up with good ideas. This is a very common practice of offloading ideas and stuff so that you can come up with more ideas. This process makes the entire process of character animation more manageable because you're breaking it down into smaller, more manageable pieces. This is a common technique for all kinds of complex things. And it alleviates the frustration of character animation because you're not struggling over one of the hurdles. You're able to get to the actual animation part of character animation more quickly because you're avoiding the problems because you planned and you storyboarded. And so having this process and implementing this process is incredibly helpful. Now I want to go back to this thought that we started out with. I'm just not cut out for character animation. Well, I don't think any of you guys believe that, or else you wouldn't be here on the live stream. I think that you do believe that there is a path forward and that you can learn character animation, and but you've probably been frustrated or overwhelmed by it. Again, I just want to reiterate that mastering character animation is possible with the right guidance, the right process, and with practice. And the problem a lot of people run into is that although YouTube is rich in resources in terms of tutorials on character animation, everybody has their own method, and there's not a clear path to beginner through the character animation process. And when you're beginning, you don't really know what you don't know, and so you may not even know where you want to start. And you may start at step 3 or 4, and that's why you're frustrated, because you didn't start at step 1, right? If you start at step 1 and progress to step 2, 3, 4, 5, then you're not going to be as frustrated. But you need some guidance. You need a path forward. So that's why I created Character Animation Launchpad, which teaches you in depth how to use this process that I just outlined to create your character animations. This is a 6-week live course where I teach a lesson each week live, where you can join just like you are now. Join, ask questions, get answers to your questions, and interact with other students. So it's a little bit different than your typical online course where you just buy it and you just watch the videos at your own pace. You don't really ever interact with anybody. Now you can watch the lessons at your own pace over the course of however long. You will have lifetime access to the live lessons. But I wanted to offer a live course because I found over the years of doing character animation tutorials on YouTube that when I had the chance to interact with people directly, I was able to help them progress so much quicker in learning character animation because I was able to answer their questions. There's nothing more frustrating, right, than not being able to figure something out, posting a comment on a YouTube video asking, hey, how can you help me with this thing? And then waiting days for somebody to come respond. I just had a comment I left on a video the other week. I finally got a response to it after a year, right? So YouTube is just not a reliable place to be able to get your questions answered quickly. Look, you can learn character animation on YouTube. I did it. You can do it, but it will take you way longer to learn it by yourself on YouTube, waiting for people to answer your questions, searching the endless black hole of YouTube to find those answers. Or you can come join the course, and in 6 weeks, you will know everything you need to know to be able to launch your character animation career into the stratosphere. That's why I'm calling it the Character Animation Launchpad, because we're giving you a foundation so that you no longer are overwhelmed by the process and you can start to practice, and just become exponentially better at character animation. So it's a 6-week cohort-based course. We will go over how to plan, design, rig, and animate characters in After Effects. There's a private Discord community. That's actually where the courses are going to be taught, is in the Discord channel. And a big part of this course is the detailed feedback you get from me that includes actionable steps to improve your skills as an animator. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second, because that's a big part of this. But don't take it from me. Take it from my students. This is Shane. He was one of our students back when we did this in January. And Shane says, I loved being able to ask questions while the lesson was in progress and get clarification and ideas while watching it with other creators. It was so much better than just watching a YouTube tutorial. I couldn't have said it better myself. The course format, like I said, lessons are live. The course is based around a final project, a final character animation that you will do. And throughout the 6 weeks, there will be little assignments that you can use that will help you to build your skills to that final project. I skipped ahead. Again, there's a private Discord. This is just a little screenshot from that Discord where you can share your progress on your assignments and you can get feedback from other students. You can give feedback to other students on their animation. And then, of course, part of this, every time you submit assignment, I will review that assignment and give you feedback on the animation. This is just a little screen cap of me going through, a little sped up time lapse of me going through. This was actually Shane's animation. And I don't just give you generic tips. I actually break open your project file and I will dig into your keyframes and I will show you, okay, here's what you did. Here's how I would make it better. So, and lots of students mentioned how that part of the course specifically was incredibly beneficial. Like Karina here said, I love the practical approach, having one little animation project of your own. She's talking about the assignments we gave out, implementing new knowledge and techniques from every week's class, and then getting feedback from John directly. I could really watch my skill level grow. Karina was one of the star students of the last cohort. She submitted every assignment, and I could see her skill go from, probably a 2 to 3, 4. Yeah, she did really good. Her final animation was awesome. And then, of course, just to reiterate, even though it is a live course, you do have lifetime access. You can always go back and watch the lessons, especially if you can't join live. I get it. Sometimes you're busy, you got work, you can't join it live, but you can always go back and ask questions. You can always jump onto the Discord and ask questions. You can also leave a comment on the lesson with questions, and I'll always be answering those. And you'll have access to those lessons for a lifetime. I still have students that enrolled in January that are just now getting through the lessons. So how do you enroll in the course? Go to keyframeacademy.com. I've left a link in the description of this video. Hit that little button right there. It says enroll now. You can enroll now. It's $97. I think that is a pretty killer deal for what you're getting with this course. In fact, I have another student that I didn't include a slide for this student's testimonial, but she said, I asked her a question about, how she felt the course went. And she said, you absolutely delivered on what you advertised. In fact, I'm amazed at how much I got out of this despite the comparatively low cost. So I think $97 is a killer deal for what you're getting. I don't know of any other course you're going to get the kind of attention that you get in this course for $97. I probably should charge more, but I want this course to be accessible to more people because, again, like I said, in my time here on YouTube, when I have a chance to directly answer people's questions, that's when they learn the quickest and they make the most progress in the least amount of time. And so that's why I decided to go with the live format rather than just pre-recording all the lessons and throwing them up and then charging for them. So that's it. There's just one catch about the course. Enrollment closes at the end of today. Okay. So the reason why is because of that attention I give to each student. Unless I want to be spending all my time reviewing animations, which is the part of the course that I actually enjoy the most, but I have to limit the amount of students that I can enroll because I can't have thousands of students, hundreds of students. So I have to close enrollment today. Enrollment's been open since Tuesday. Today's the last day to enroll. And I'll just be frank with you, we're not full yet, but I wouldn't wait until the end of today because last cohort we did fill up before the end of the day. And so, yeah. So if you're interested, click that link below. Go check it out. Not yet though, because I want to get to some of your questions. And then after we're done answering questions, go check out the link. There's more information on that website where you can learn about the course. All right, so let's talk about questions. Let me pull up I know there's a ton of questions, and I want to get to all of them. All right. William asks, why use AE over character animator? That's a good question. Everybody has their own personal reasons. I think for me, I just like After Effects. I'm more familiar with it. I like the graph editor. I feel like I can get the result that I want over the graph editor. I think that for what I do as a motion designer, which is primarily explainer videos, the kinds of character animations that I need to do, I don't need the level of complexity in character animator. And I don't actually, character animator is interesting to me if you're interested in using your webcam to kind of create your animation with your body, like motion capture. I'm not impressed with the animation tools as much. So, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of character animator, although I have to be honest, I haven't invested a lot of time in learning it. But I do feel like for a lot of the stuff that I do, it's a little overkill, and you can get some really fun, smooth animations through in After Effects. Hopefully that answers your question. I don't discourage anybody from learning character animator. I just think that it's a little overkill, and some of the process of setting up a character, I just don't. It's a little overcomplicated for me. Let me just go back to the main window here. Okay, maybe it's just a simple question. I'd like to know if there's any difference in choosing frame rate for character animation. Some people say, I prefer 12 frame. Some people say 24, 25, or 30. So yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. It's all about preference. I am one of those who says I prefer 12 frames per second, and I'll tell you why. Most of your traditional animation is done on 2s, which is 12 frames per second, because it reduced the amount of work an animator had to do by only having to do 12 frames for every second rather than 24, which is double the work. But I also feel like it just looks better. I don't know why. The choppiness of it just looks better than 24, 30 frames per second. The smoothness of that, it just is a style I don't really like. I shouldn't say I don't like, but it's not as appealing as 12 frames per second. So yeah, that's really, it's just it comes down to a preference. There's no rule to whether or not you should do 24 or 12 frames per second. I will just say that traditionally characters were animated on 2s. And there is a little bit of theory behind it. It has to do with the kind of motion you want to convey. Some animations translate better to a higher frame rate. Some look better at a lower frame rate. It's just something you kind of have to develop a feel for by studying animation. Yeah, like William said, Kyrgyz, that channel, I don't know how to say it, uses 60 frames per second. I don't like it. Yeah, it just feels too smooth. And to me, I feel like the flaws of the animation are much more apparent when you're at a very high frame rate. It just doesn't look as appealing to me. And I don't think any kind of 2D animation was ever done at 60 frames per second. There's a reason for that. It would be way too much work. Okay. Should I have to master frame by frame animation? No. You don't have to master frame by frame animation. That's the beauty of After Effects. You can create. I mean, don't even just look at my animations. Just go on to Instagram and start searching up character animation After Effects. You will see that the kinds of character animations that you can create in After Effects are crazy. The sky's really the limit. You just need to know the process to get there. So I think that's the beauty of character animation in After Effects. You don't have to master frame by frame animation. And I like After Effects. It appeals to me because I feel like keyframes simplify the animation process. If you've ever tried to ease something, apply an easy ease to a frame by frame animation, that's a skill in and of itself. Okay, so which rigging system is better? Duik, Angela, Limber, Rubber Hose, DK, Puppet Pins. Definitely not Puppet Pins. I could say that outright. And then I'll just lump this into the next question. Do you still prefer Limber over Duik Angela? Yes. Duik Angela didn't really introduce anything new that made me go, wow, this totally changes the game. They did improve a lot of things. But I still find Duik is slow. I'm sorry to just say it. Duik bogs down my system way more than any other tool. And then again, like I mentioned earlier with Limber, I like to use Limber because of its ability to do foreshortening, stuff like that. If you want to get into any kind of perspective animation that implements some kind of perspective, Limber is really your only option as far as I know. I know that there's some things you can do with DK Tool and Rubber Hose to kind of imitate foreshortening and perspective, but it's just not the same as Limber. And Limber is way easier to use than Duik. It's way easier to use than Duik. But that doesn't, by the way, I don't use Duik to rig my character's limbs. I use Duik for other things because Duik comes with a bunch of other tools like the connector that I use to enhance my Limber rigs. So I definitely think Duik is worth having on your system installed and getting to know. And I've put out tutorials about Duik, but it's just not my main rigging tool. My most difficult for me is to start with an effective animation tool that is easy to manipulate. My question is, what tool do you recommend with this characteristic? Do you mean character rigging tool or program? Because those are two different questions, but I think I kind of already answered why I like Limber. It's easy to use. And I think Limber strikes the right balance between ease of use and features. I'll tell you, I don't use DK Tool. I don't use Rubber Hose. And for one very specific reason, they don't have FK. Okay? And that's a non-starter for me. If you're not giving me FK capabilities, then you're not giving me a complete character rig. You have to be able to use IK and FK. And if you don't know what those are, the differences between those two, go watch my last video on my channel because I explained it. And I explained when to use each, why, what the benefits of each, and why you should use each, both IK and FK. And Rubber Hose and DK Tool don't have those. So it kind of blows my mind when people choose Rubber Hose over Limber, to be honest. Okay. So let me go. Can you talk us through your process for gathering resources? Yeah. Well, first of all, the process starts with an idea, right? And so generating ideas, usually it goes like this. I have a line from a script, and then I'll have a description of the visual that's going to go with that line. And then I will go to sketching out really, really rough sketches of what that description might look like. And if there's anything in that rough sketch, and I might make a couple different variations, if there's anything in there that I need reference for, like I don't know how to draw a character in this perspective, or, I don't know how to draw the hand in this perspective, then I will go through Pinterest and I will go look for specific references for those things, and I'll kind of continue to upgrade that. That's kind of my process for gathering references. Somebody said, you briefly mentioned in a video that it is possible, albeit difficult, to use Limber with Photoshop layers. Yeah, Limber, as of this moment, Limber has no native ability to do Photoshop layers. What you can do is you can make a Limber limb, and then you can create a middle joint, and then you can parent your Photoshop layers to the controllers and just overlay them over the stock. In fact, you can use Limber has a 3 circles limb. It's just 3 circles for each joint, and you can use those as a way to parent your layers to. The other thing you can do is you can use Limber in combination with a tool called Bow Bones, although Bow Bones is expensive, but in terms of the way that Bow Bones works, it's the best for using Photoshop layers instead of the Puppet Pin tool, which the Puppet Pin tool you should just not use. It's not good for character animation. The way it distorts layers is just not good. Bow Bones, however, distorts layers really well, and you can use it in combination with Limber because Bow Bones the controls aren't as intuitive as Limber. And so you can create, or you can rig it up with Bow Bones, and then you can parent that to Limber, and then you can use all the controls of Limber to animate your character. Again, though, if you want to do Photoshop layers at this point, I might just suggest you use Duik. Although, I don't know, there might be something in the future with Limber. I don't know. I'm not saying anything. Artem asked, does the iPad really help you in the working process? Yes, absolutely. I love my iPad. And he also asked, is it useful to make full copies of some great animations? If you're just practicing, I wouldn't post it as your own work, but I think it does help you learn if you're imitating something that you admire, because in the process of doing that, you're going to learn. But I wouldn't post that as, hey, I made this. If you're going to copy the animation. Now, you can gain inspiration. You can do a tribute to something that inspired you. Sure. I don't have a storyboard. So William asked, can we see, or do you have an Illustrator storyboard template? I don't have a template, but I can show you kind of a more extensive storyboard than what I showed you. Okay. Let me pull up Illustrator here. Ooh, it's been a while since I've used my streaming setup, so let me just cover this up. Okay, so here's a storyboard for a full animation that I made, right? So this is each kind of scene, and you'll notice it's black and white because I don't like to, personally, I don't like to deal with the colors until the end. I like to just see the values, make sure things look okay, things are, what's sticking out. So I work on the grayscale first, and then I'll go back and add colors. The actual storyboard starts right here. Can't really see my mouse for some reason, but this guy. That's where the actual storyboard starts. Here is just the character designed out and all the different perspectives that I know I'm going to need. Here's the head with a bunch of different expressions. This is the head designed out for joysticks and sliders. I don't necessarily copy this. It's just for reference when I actually go to set everything up. Here's the limbs. Here's him in a different outfit. And then once I've created the character rig and all these different assets, then I can just copy these character rigs and I can kind of modify them to create the storyboard. These characters in these storyboards, I'm not actually going to, copy this over to After Effects. It's more just for reference for me and potentially a client to look at and see. Ignore this, by the way, this title, because that is not the correct, just keyframeacademy.com. That other URL won't take you anywhere. So yeah, this is kind of what a storyboard looks like, a little bit more extensive. Okay, Manny asks, hey, I want to learn character animation. I am a motion designer, but I am not able to sketch a proper character as I am bad at drawing. But doodles very rough sketches, I am okay. So doodling rough sketches, I'm okay. How do I go about it? Well, part of the course, I actually teach you how you can, I simplify the character illustration phase. Let me see if I can pull something up really quick that will illustrate what I mean by that. New course. I have a graphic that I made for the course that I think okay, this is good enough. So in the course, I show you how to take this kind of format of character design and how you can use it to create characters that you design yourself, or this is a character that I downloaded from a stock website, and you can basically turn this into a working character rig. So that's something that I cover in the course. So yeah, this isn't the full thing. I had another document that was a little bit better at showing it, but I don't want to spend all my time. Yeah, this is kind of a little bit more extensive, just showing you how characters are really just made up of circles connected with rectangles, and you can use that to create all these different poses. That's basically the anatomy of a character rig, and I show you how you can adapt almost any character design to that. So hopefully that answers your question. Valerie asks, what's the schedule of the course? So it's 6 weeks starting on May 10th. We do the lessons every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. That lands in the evening for Europe, and it's at a manageable time for the most amount of people. Unfortunately, if you're in kind of Hawaii, New Zealand, Australia, it's kind of early morning for you. But there's just not one time that works for every single person. But 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time seems to be a good time for the most amount of people. Get this out of the way. Okay. Way asks, does Limmer lend itself to animating pixel-based images? Kind of already answered that with the Photoshop question. Alina wants some examples of animations from the first course. Ooh. Let me see if I can pull those up really quick. Wait. Shoot. Well. Let's see. Okay. Let me just mute this. So, let me just play this for you. I think I have a scene set up. Nope, that is After Effects. Let me, sorry guys, give me a second. I wasn't prepared for this part. Let me just switch this to Premiere. There we go. You'll see some of my animations in here, but these are some of the animations from the first course. Done. Okay. Okay. That's mine. And then that's that. So there's some animations from the first course. What do you guys think? Let me know what you think. Roland says it would be interesting to see you jump into Calvary. I've played around a little bit in Calvary, but you know, it does have some character animation tools. Like it has a joysticks and sliders kind of thing. It has a rubber hose kind of a thing. I just have to get used to the way Cavalry works. If it's faster than After Effects, I'm definitely open to it. Yes, Valerie, that's correct. 10 a.m. starting next week. And again, today's the last day to enroll because we got to get started, and I also don't want people joining halfway through. And if you don't join this time, there will be future cohorts to join, but you know. Ahmed asks, have you ever tried to create a 360 rig in After Effects? I haven't created a 360 rig, but I have created rigs that can turn 180. I haven't had a need for a full 360 turn for an animation personally, but I definitely have done faux 3D, fake 3D rigs before. Valerie asks, will you help on creativity part, how to get started on a project, how to find ideas, or how to translate brief into concept, or maybe in another tutorial? I do touch a little bit on that in the first lesson. I try to keep the lessons around 45 minutes, so obviously I can't go too long. And I want the course to be primarily focused on the process of character animation, but definitely I do walk you through how I would take a line in a script and turn it into an idea, and then into a sketch, and then into an animatic, that then you have a plan going forward. So I do a little bit of that in the course. Why is your TikTok empty? Because I don't post on TikTok. That's why. What minimum comp requirements will we need for the course? I'm assuming you're asking minimum computer requirements. If you can run After Effects, then you can take the course. Is there a follow-up course after this course? This is a great question. There will be future courses where we get more into detail. One thing that a lot of people want to learn is kind of more of the perspective stuff, the 2.5D animation. That is a future course that will come after this. But I started with this course because these are the kind of things I see most people struggling with. And like I said earlier, a lot of people want to jump to that kind of more advanced stuff, but you really do need to master. You need to intimately know how a character rig should be put together before you try to start shifting it into different perspectives and stuff like that. William Meese, how do you feel about joysticks and sliders versus Limber? I don't think that those two are comparable. I mean, there's no reason to pit those two against each other because joysticks and sliders is totally different than Limber. They don't do the same thing. They're both for character animation, but they don't tackle the same thing. I use joysticks and sliders with my rigs all the time in conjunction with Limber. But joysticks and sliders doesn't handle limbs. It doesn't handle limbs. It handles head rigs, and so that's what I use it for. Thanks, Roland. I just saw your enrollment come through. Glad to have you. There's actually a couple of you who I've seen come through. I haven't looked too closely at my emails, but yeah, a couple of enrollments have come through while we've been talking about that. That's awesome. It's very cool, guys. Very cool of you. About workflow. When and how do you add sound? I prefer to have recorded a proper VO before I animate, but my clients want the animation before the VO. Damn it, Emma. I agree with you. And I slam my fists on the desk because I don't animate before I have a VO, because what your clients don't understand is that you can record a scratch VO, but your timing won't be the same as the final VO, and then you will have to go back and readjust all the timing, and we're dealing with hundreds if not thousands of keyframes. That can become very annoying. So I always wait for the final VO unless it's impossible, but I try to avoid animating anything before I have the final VO as much as I can. Control S did a dab. Nice. Yeah. Yep. If your client doesn't approve, start changing by the hour. They'll change their mind quickly. True. Darlene, very cool examples. I like the dog walk cycle the best. Yeah, that was a cool one. How different would you say the course will be for a student of your previous one? I'm not sure what you mean. How different will the course be for a student of your previous one? Can you elaborate what you mean by that? Course members get a discount on Limber. Yes, I have a 10% discount. Limber is not that expensive anyway, but I do have a discount code for those who have not yet purchased Limber but who want to enroll in the course. follow-up question. How do you find your ideas? Do you easily know what to create? That's my weak point. I think, okay, so first of all, I want to say I hear you and I relate to that. And I think we all go through phases where we feel like it's like we just have no good ideas and it's hard to come up with good ideas. It's all a matter of perspective, because if you're looking at my animations and you think, wow, he always has like these ideas, just understand that that's not how I feel. Sometimes I feel like I have an idea for an animation, I create the animation, I go, is this even cool? I don't know. You know, it's very hard to see your own ideas objectively, how other people see them. I almost feel universally other people think your stuff is cooler than you do. As artists, we're our own worst critics. In terms of answering your question, where do I find my ideas? Well, I'm social media. I watch what other people are creating. I get inspired by other people. And I make sure not to copy their ideas, but I definitely am inspired by them. And I think just by ingesting art in general, you start to develop a muscle for coming up with ideas. Oh, nice! Another enrollment just came through. Nice. Like I said, especially after this live stream, if you're interested in enrolling the course, I would not wait until the end of the day. I will send out a reminder email. So if you're not on my newsletter or on my email list, you can go sign up on my email list on my website. I'll send a reminder before the end, but I just wouldn't wait till the very end, because we might close early if we fill it up. I don't know if we will. I'm not trying to pressure you, but we did last time a couple hours early. So if you don't want to miss it, just make sure you don't miss it. So anyway, how do I find ideas? Yeah, I think it's just knowing where to look. Pinterest is a great place for ideas. Artificial intelligence. In fact, somebody asked me a question about artificial intelligence. How are you incorporating external artificial intelligence tools into your current animation processes? So first of all, Valerie, AI in terms of generating ideas is an incredibly powerful tool. If you haven't tried ChatGPT, I highly encourage it. I don't always love the ideas that it comes up with, but ChatGPT to me is almost like having somebody to bounce ideas off of. Okay? And that's incredibly useful. If you're just working in a vacuum, you're not bouncing ideas off of anybody, that's where you start to feel like none of your ideas are very good, because you have nobody to say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? But if you can figure out how to, be around other creatives and use ChatGPT, yeah. Sometimes I will say, hey, ChatGPT, hey, bud, here's a line of this script. What are some visual ideas that could go along? I'm making an explainer video and I want some visual ideas. Can you give me like 5 visual ideas of what I could show on screen as the narrator is saying these words? ChatGPT is smart enough to understand all of that. The ideas aren't always great, but sometimes something it says is a kernel of an idea. And I can go, oh, there's something I can build off of, right? So yeah, check out AI. Also using like an AI image generator, like Midjourney. That's an incredibly powerful tool for generating ideas or looks. In fact, I'll be 100% frank with you guys. The kind of the color scheme of the website for this course and everything was all derived from an AI generated image that I made on Midjourney. And the great thing about Midjourney is you can take images from Pinterest or whatever, you can put it into Midjourney. You can say, I want you to create this image that I dreamt up of, but you use this image I'm providing you as a kind of style for the image that you're going to create. There is no AI that I'm aware of yet that can make vector graphics. But again, for me, the AI image generator is not so much that I want to use the specific image that the AI generated, because for one, the details of the image aren't really that great, but the overall composition is great. And so I'll oftentimes use that AI generated image as kind of a starting point. If you're not using AI, it's how much your costs work for an hour. Typically, probably around $120 to $150 an hour. I don't work for anything less than $100 an hour. Okay. Looks like you guys got all your questions out. Thanks for watching, everybody. We still have 24 people here, so if you have any last questions, get them in, because we're about to end the live stream. But I just want to thank everybody for joining the live stream and for asking all your questions. I'm just going to do one more skim of the questions here. Valerie, thank you for enrolling. I just saw that come through. Thanks for joining, and thanks for asking so many good questions, because I know that your questions are probably the same questions a lot of people here have been asking, and so thanks for doing that. Yeah, I think just on the topic of AI, I think there's a temptation to be kind of intimidated by AI because, you know, we've seen a lot of really cool stuff made with AI. But, there's a channel on YouTube, Corridor Digital. I'm sure some of you guys have heard of them, seen their videos. They've done a lot of stuff with AI. And I kind of feel the way that they feel about AI, particularly with like these image generation softwares. It's kind of democratizing the creative process. It's, you know, when you have right now, if you have an idea in your head, in order to execute on that idea, there's so much work of learning how to use a program. Like, for example, if you have this scene in your head and you want to create it in 3D, there is so much you need to learn. You need to learn how to use a 3D program. You need to learn all the terminology that is associated with that program. You need to learn how to do material. You need to know how to do lighting. You need to know how to make lighting that looks good, aesthetically pleasing. You need to know animation, a bunch of stuff. Materials, there's just so much to do. There's so much you need to learn in order to just realize that vision you had. And with like a thing like Midjourney, it's closing that gap. You have an idea, describe it to Midjourney. Midjourney will do all the work. Now you can create stuff much more easily. And I get it. It feels, especially for artists, part of making art is the effort in making art. That's part of what we love about making art, is the actual creation process. And when you hand that process over to a computer, I understand why a lot of people have a hard time with it. I do. But in terms of how I'm using artificial intelligence in my workflow is, again, like that buddy to bounce ideas off of, or to create references for me. TM, yeah. You can go back and watch the stream. I'll leave it up. Don't worry about it. Mikhail, my number one fan. Hey, you know what, Mikhail? You know where I've been? I've been teaching courses, and so the YouTube videos have taken a little bit of a back burner. But if you join the course, you won't miss me because you'll be joining me for the lessons. Just another enrollment came through. So if they keep coming through at this rate, we might fill up before the end of the day. And that's end of the day, 12 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, which is like -6 UTC. So that's probably sometime in the middle of the day, Saturday, for those of you in Europe. So if you're watching this later, and if you're watching this after the course has closed, I'm so sorry that you weren't able to get it. Sorry, guys, I got to do this for the people who are going to see this after. I'm so sorry you didn't make it for the course. However, if you still go to the website in the description, you can get on the wait list for the next cohort, be notified as soon as it opens up. Abstract, just signed up. Yes, I saw that come through, just barely. Awesome. Alina S. Will we also be learning foreshortening? Not in this course. There's just not enough time to tackle that. And foreshortening is one of those things that you need to learn the foundational skills first before you start implementing that into your animations. However, Alina, if that's something that you are interested in the future, go sign up on my email list because the next course that I will be working on will be all about perspective in animation. So if you're interested in that, just go to my website. Down at the footer of the website, there's a little form. Leave your name and email, and I'll let you know when that course is coming. Probably sometime after June. In the meantime, you can sign up for the Launchpad and learn with us there. I'm going to play this one more time. This student animations. Desktop audio. I don't know if you guys can hear that. I don't know. You guys probably can't hear that, but do hear something a little bit. Yeah, you're probably just hearing the music coming through my mic, but that's okay. I'm going to post this up later so you can watch it. In the course, will we get the AI file for the character skeleton you showed us there? Absolutely. In fact, I'll give you all kinds of project files you can open up and dissect and look around. Where do we get the discount for the plugin? Oh, let me check back later today. I'm going to add it in the first section of the course. The onboarding section, I'll add in there where you can get the discount. Let me do this again. Oops. In fact,
I just want to say some of these animations that were done that are in here were animations that the students in my course didn't actually do for the course, but they went and did after the course and just posted up in the Discord. And I was like, hey, can I use those for my promo video? Because they're really good. Particularly like this animation done by Bryce. This is not the animation that he did for the course, but he posted this up and said, hey, look at, I've, kind of taken the things from the course and I've made this animation. And I was actually kind of stunned because you can feel the tension that this character, and we go over everything, the animation principles that you need to implement in order to make animation appealing. Things like anticipation, overlapping action, secondary action, animating on arcs. We go over all of it, and I show you the process of implementing that into your animations. So that's just part of the course. All right, guys. Well, hey, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Thanks for all the really good questions. I think I addressed everybody's questions. I'm just going to do one more scan to make sure I didn't miss any questions. There is one question. How can we work faster? Well, you can work faster by choosing the right tools, which if you want to work fast, Duik is not your tool. And 2, Limber is. And 2, having the right process. That's how you work faster. And I go over all of that in the course. All right. I think that's it. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining. We'll see you guys. Keep an eye out next week on the channel for another YouTube video. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you guys on the flip.